First off, before we get this AFL recap show going, I just want to appreciate Coach Hess taking his time to join us once again and to pretty much officially announce that he is our official AFL correspondent of the Fourth and Long podcast. So let's give a round of applause. Welcome to the team, Coach Hess. Yeah, I'm sure it's a ginormous honor to you.
It's a great honor actually to be able to show a little bit of love to the AFL over here in the States. Is not something you see very often, and
No.
to see the expansion in the U.S. is awesome. So
Mm-hmm.
to be able to have this opportunity, I appreciate you guys letting me come on.
Mm-hmm. Of course, anytime. I love expanding footy, and I just want, before we get started again, I just want to appreciate, send my thanks to everyone on Twitter who's reached out to us. All these either Aussie AFL, these Aussie footy fans, or actual footy fans that are living in the U.S. We appreciate all your love and support on Twitter. Everyone really shelled out for our most recent episode when we brought Coach Hess on for the first time to talk footy. People show us all kinds of support. It's one of our most popular shows already, and it hasn't even been out for a full week. So I love all of you guys for that, and I just want to say thank you. But with that being said, we got some footy to talk about. We got the inaugural, pretty much, footy recap show on Fourth and Long. So let's not keep things waiting. Let's get right into things, and we're going to kick it off with our AFL power rankings. We're going to go per usual from 5 to 1. So Coach Hess, kick us off. Number 5, what you got for us?
Okay, with number five, this is really hard because this has been kind of an interesting year. I really couldn't split it down. So right now in the number five spot, we actually have two teams. We have the
Okay.
Geelong Cats and the Richmond Tigers. Both over the last five have been 3-2. Richmond kind of seeing a renaissance of their old school form from the last few years when they've been one of the best teams in the league. And Geelong, a lot like last year, starting to show that really strong form. So it's going to be really interesting over these next couple of weeks to see how both of these clubs respond after a really good game stretch of 3-2 in the last five. So it'll be very
Okay.
interesting to see how both these clubs, especially with Geelong
Mm-hmm.
playing eventual up in the power rankings, Port Adelaide Power.
Mm-hmm. Then number 4, we have
Number
another. These next three teams have all been pretty even with each other over this last 5 game stretch. So let's kick in number 4. Who you got for us?
Number four, let's go with the St. Kilda Saints, a team that really has seen a significant increase in ability this year, bringing in several players from different clubs this year, and seeing immediate enhancement to their game, and a team that's really kind of at that precipice. Are they going to be a chance to win the flag, or are they going to be a team that makes the finals and just maybe doesn't have enough? But a team that could see a lot of success over the next couple of seasons.
Mm-hmm. And then number 3.
Number three, this is a team that I've really enjoyed over the last couple of years, and that's the Brisbane Lions. A team is very young, very talented, has a lot of good players on it, but just sometimes just lacks that killer instinct in front of goal. They're one of those teams that they're really good at getting the ball inside 50. They're just not so good at hitting the goal. So the biggest thing, if Brisbane wants to go far, if they want to contend for a grand final and a flag, they gotta sure up their goal kicking. But a strong 4-1 over the last five for the Brisbane Lions, and a team that is going to be difficult over these next few games going into the final last little stretch before the finals.
And now the current number 1 team in all of AFL right now is not your number 1 team in your power rankings. Who's number 2?
Number two would be the Port Adelaide Power, a team that all year has been so strong. Their form has been really good. They just got nipped by our number one team just because of the fact that they did have that loss a couple weeks ago to St. Kilda in a game that really kind of has not really been their strong point. But Port Adelaide played Richmond this last week and had a very strong game, one of the best games of the season at home in a very hostile home crowd in the Adelaide Oval. So I still say I think in the next couple of weeks they'll probably take over the number one spot. But this Port
Mm-hmm.
Adelaide Power team is definitely a team to watch out for in the finals.
And then let's cap it off. best team in the last 5 weeks. Who is it?
Number one would be the West Coast Eagles, the only team over the last 5 games to be 5-0, and a team that they really, after a dud of a start, going into the hub, going 1-3 in the hub, and not really doing well, but they've enjoyed the home cooking back at home, going
Mm-hmm.
5-0 in the last five. They're starting to get their stars going. Their midfield has looked really, really strong with the addition of Tim Kelly from Geelong in the trade season this last year, and they're starting to show the form that they had in 2017 when they were able to raise the flag. So a team that honestly they were in the doldrums at one time, and now it looked to be a genuine threat to win the flag.
It's really been heating up for them. I've been very impressed because pretty much around the same time I really start to invest into this sport is the time that West Coast started to get hot and to get on this 5-0 streak. So for me, my whole experience, most of my experience watching footy, it's been that I know just from standings and from highlights that Port Adelaide is the real deal, and there are a bunch of killers up there. But West Coast is something special, and they really have something building there, especially in their last little bit push into the playoffs at the end of the season. And,
Yeah, and definitely. And the biggest thing is this power ranking is really going to shift this week with Geelong and Port playing each other. And we're recording this. The game is actually tomorrow morning. It's going to be one of the best games of the week. In fact, I would say the one game in this upcoming round that
mm-hmm.
is the one to watch, just because it's going to be a prover. Is Geelong and Port, who wins it, who's going to be that number one team going into the finals.
Man, you're hyping this up. I'm super excited. Hell, it's at 3:50 in the morning for me here in Idaho, and I am very. If it wasn't for work, yeah, you could bet I'd be up for that. Unfortunately, not gonna be able to watch it live, but I'll be watching all the highlights and get as much of the action as possible because man, that game just seems like it's about to be an absolute ripper of a show, and with a lot of just a lot riding on the result as well to it. So that's definitely one to watch
Yeah,
out for. Appreciate you highlighting that one. Cannot wait. But
yeah,
there we go. Top five from 5 to 1. We have a little bit of a tie. It's kind of cheating, but it is your first time really doing this, so I'll excuse it now. I'll excuse. But we have a Richmond, Geelong.
with Geelong or Richmond, with them, you're really splitting hairs. I mean,
Yeah,
both are
right.
really, really good footy teams. I think, like I said, the Port Geelong game is going to tell me if Geelong is for real, if they're
Mm-hmm.
going to stay in the top five or not. I mean, if Port knocks them off and Richmond takes out Gold Coast in this weekend, I mean, it's pretty simple. Richmond's going to take the 5 spot, if not
Yep.
move up, depending on how St. Kilda does against Essendon, which is an interesting matchup too. So there's a lot of really good games this week that I'm really looking forward to.
Exactly. Then number 4 is St. Kilda. Number 3 we had Brisbane. Number 2 was of course Port Adelaide, and number 1 is the streaking undefeated in the last 5 weeks West Coast. Love it. So now moving on from the power rankings, let's talk some recent games real quick. Would you like to kick us off with round 10? Some of your reactions from the action of that week.
Yeah, sure. Round 10, we're kind of going back a couple of weeks,
Mm-hmm.
and I know it's really interesting, but just kind of going back is some of the week results was Port Adelaide continuing their strongs with a 13-point win over the Western Bulldogs. Western Bulldogs continuing to kind of have a Jekyll and Hyde. They'll have a couple of really good games and then a couple of bad games. Just really kind of bouncing back and forth. The premier game of the round was a little bit surprising with Richmond knocking off Brisbane by 41, which kind of shocked me a little bit. I thought Brisbane was really going to be into that game. That was the only loss for Brisbane in the last five. So it kind of takes them down a little bit. Richmond's always strong, but Brisbane's one of those teams that kind of got beat. They kind of got nipped a little bit by the lack of scoring in that game. So it's
Mm-hmm.
definitely kind of see if they make some adjustments going over the next couple of weeks. Geelong took on North Melbourne. Geelong beating North Melbourne by 33 in a game that North Melbourne just has not had a lot of luck after the first couple of weeks, and then pulling off a big upset victory over GWS, and then
Mm-hmm.
they just have not been able to sustain that with 4 or 5 losses. And Reece Shaw right now is really trying to pull his troops together over the last couple of weeks, just kind of losing the wheels off the cart per se. Melbourne knocks off Adelaide, and Adelaide's abysmal season at this point by 51 points
Hmm.
at home
That
in
hurt
the
to watch,
Adelaide
man.
Oval. It's so hard to watch Adelaide right now. That they've had so much drama over the last couple of years. So I think I'm just crossing my fingers. Hopefully they don't tie the record of being one of the few teams that does not win a game in the entire season.
Well, at least
Moving on.
with my limited knowledge, somewhat limited on footy, I already know for a fact that there's three things in life that are guaranteed: death, taxes, and Adelaide being in the bottom of the standings.
Which is really, really funny because you wouldn't believe in 2017 they were playing Richmond in the grand final, how they have
What
fallen from grace over
happened
the
to
last
that,
couple of
man?
years.
Wow.
Um, they had a training camp that just went all to heck, and then 2018 they could not keep people healthy, and then last year was kind of the same thing. Had a lot of injuries, so that's been kind of their Achilles
That's
heel.
unfortunate.
And
Just a little bit of string of
they're a
bad luck
club
is
that
what it sounds like.
Yeah, and they're a club that've been having trouble keeping guys there. They've had a
Mm.
lot of really talented players that have slipped off to other clubs. So, and moving on from that one, that was really hard for me as a Sydney Swans fan is Collingwood nipping Sydney by 9. Sydney, a young team this year with a lot of injuries to some of their key players, but getting a lot of game time into some of the younger players this season. So, and Collingwood just kind of scraping through a little bit with a team that has a lot of injuries itself. So it's kind of going to be very interesting to see how these next few weeks kind of progress.
Mm-hmm.
St. Kilda and Gold Coast in the game of the round. St. Kilda
Phenomenal.
edges Gold Coast by 4. St. Kilda a strong performance, but Gold Coast looking like the Philadelphia 76ers process, finally getting some of those talents to play a little better. Gold Coast could be a team in the next couple of seasons you could definitely see challenging in the playoffs and potentially for a flag if they can keep really awesome stars like Isaac Rankin still in the fold. And unfortunately, they lost Matty Rowell, the number one overall pick, to a shoulder separation in the third week of the season. They were looking really, really strong with him in the midfield. Sad to see him out for the year, but a lot of things to look forward to as a Gold Coast Suns fan. If you find yourself as a Suns fan, there's a lot of talent there.
All right, here we go. Move on
Moving
to
on
this
from
last
there,
one now. Give me a little bit of love for my Giants before
your
we get.
GWS
Give me
Giants.
some love for them before we have to talk about what happened in round 12. Okay.
Oh boy, GWS and Essendon in a really really good game. Unfortunately, I gotta say it to you. Essendon should have won that footy
I
game.
agree. I
A
agree.
few calls there at the end that were a little, shall we say, suspect. And I have a few friends that are Essendon supporters who were not happy with the free kick call
I don't know.
towards the end of
You
that
say
game. But
suspect. I say straight down the line. Great calls.
and it's and again the refereeing sometimes can be very very subjective.
Hmm.
And it was a very good footy game, and GWS is a solid team, and Essendon has been one of those. They'll have a great game, they'll have a bad game, they'll have a couple of good games, they'll have a bad game. They've been a little like Western Bulldogs.
Hmm.
They have the problem of the Jekyll and Hyde. So that's round 10. uh, no, we'll skip real fast in round 11.
No problem.
Game of the season in round 11 at this present point for me, that is Port Adelaide beating Richmond by 21 in the Adelaide Oval in an absolute cracking game of football.
That wasn't
If
that
you get a chance
so
to
much fun
watch
to
the
watch, man.
highlights,
So.
if you get to watch the highlights,
Yeah.
watch the highlights.
Hmm.
This game was bash, crash. Both teams were getting up and down the field. The skill was amazing. In my opinion, personally, this could have been a preview of the grand final if
Ooh.
Richmond continues their strong thing. This could have been a preview of the grand final. It's got several weeks of footy. Anything can happen. But in my personal opinion, if we get another game like this in the grand final, I will not be disappointed. So,
Now, is
moving
is
on.
kind of being the fresher AFL fan. This is by far the greatest footy game I've ever witnessed with my eyes. And then if anyone I know, I'm trying to show them highlights of this game to get them into this because man, if you want to watch footy, if you want to see great footy, oh my gosh, there's almost nothing better than this game. It was just it's undescribable how much fun I had watching that. And I typically have fun watching footy, but this was next level.
Yeah, that was a really good game. The only other game that I can come close this year that was just as good was Port Adelaide beat Carlton a few weeks ago, and Port Adelaide got Carlton with a kick after the siren, basically the equivalency of a buzzer beater in footy. One of the best games of the year. Those right now are two of my top three games of the season, both having Port. So if Port continues this form, I could definitely see them having a chance to raise the flag at the end of the year. So moving on, the next game was Brisbane versus Western Bulldogs. Brisbane, again, Western having another high type of game, just did not play well. Brisbane wins by 24. Moving on, West Coast comes up and beats Carlton by 22 in a game that I'm a little surprised by the scoreline. I thought Carlton would be in this game. Carlton's been a team that has played pretty well, but that loss to Port has really kind of shook their confidence, and they haven't played well in the last couple of games. So it'll be interesting to see how David Teague and the Carlton Blues kind of bounce back in the next couple of weeks after a game that I honestly thought would be a little bit closer than the final margin. Melbourne versus North Melbourne. Surprisingly, another different scoreline. I thought North would win this one, and Melbourne beats them by 57.
Bit the opposite.
The Kangaroos, they just have not looked very good after week three, so it's definitely interesting. The Fremantle oh, where are we at? Okay, there we go. Geelong versus St. Kilda is
Hmm.
the next game. This one, again, another shocking scoreline. I thought St. Kilda Geelong would be a really close game. I thought both these teams are really, really good, on strong form. Geelong gets St. Kilda by 59. This started a lot of questions whether St. Kilda is as strong as they are. So we'll
Mm.
have to see. The power rankings could stretch in the next couple of weeks if St. Kilda, if this form is true or not. We'll have to see. Geelong is really, really tough at home, and St. Kilda is one of those teams. Again, they've had the occasional. They've really only had a couple of losses, and Carlton
Hmm.
to Geelong and Collingwood, but both margins of loss were not close. So their percentage is going to take a hit in this situation. So we'll definitely have to look at that. After that, kind of a game I thought was a really good game, surprisingly, in some really bad weather, is Fremantle versus Hawthorn, where Fremantle gets Hawthorn by 16 in a game that I thought the young talent of Fremantle, a team that's really kind of progressing slowly, versus what I would say the old guard of Hawthorn,
Mm.
a team that has won flags in the early part of the decade and is now kind of seeing not so good a footy form right now. So we'll definitely have to see how Clarko handles this over the next couple of weeks. In fact, I think we'll talk about that a little bit later. Is what Hawthorn will kind of do over these next few weeks going on into the season. Collingwood versus Adelaide. Collingwood's injuries had me a little bit worried that they'd be the team that Adelaide would beat, but
Not yet.
unfortunately, nope, not yet. Adelaide still keeps the donut in front of their names. Collingwood beats Adelaide by 24. And then the surprising, fun last game of the round, Gold Coast and Essendon draw. Does not happen often,
Nope.
and Essendon had to put out everything they could just to keep the draw. Gold Coast had a couple of chances to win it, just couldn't execute in the end. In a cracking game of football, a little bit ugly towards the end, but
Hmm.
definitely a game. It was definitely worth the watch, even if the ending is kind of a little bit anticlimactic, shall someone say.
That's a very fair point. Great week of action right there. Definitely a lot more scoring in round 11 than it was in round 10, which was probably the funnest week of footy that I've had the chance to watch because, not gonna lie, it's fun to watch offense. There's nothing like a good smash mouth game with really good defense, but also just as a newcoming fan, I can't lie, it's fun to see a bunch of points scored and a lot of balls going through the uprights. But moving on to week 12, I
Yeah,
guess we've had as a recording.
and
It's only been one game, and
unfortunately,
this was easily my least favorite game of footy I have ever seen, especially being a New Giants fan. So you wanna talk about this
I
while I
promise,
hide my tears to the camera?
unfortunately, and as you guys can see, I am a Sydney Swan supporter, and the battle of the bridge, the game between the two Sydney squads, is the Sydney Swans had their young team kind of nipped a GWS team that, again, just I don't know why, just did not show up this morning. Did not have a very good game. As as the Swans pulled out a 41-point victory, and the young Swans keep some confidence. And this really kind of questions now is, does GWS, do they stay in the eight to stay in the finals? Or does this lead to kind of a late season fallback to where do we look at, do they start shipping out some of this talent to maybe get some more draft picks or kind of see? So it's very, very interesting. It was definitely a surprising scoreline. Even I honestly, when I tipped this game earlier in the week, I had GWS winning the game. I thought Sydney's injuries would be an issue. I thought GWS was with the talent and the strength. Now they did have a couple of really good players out. Toby Green isn't playing for them. Phil Davis, their all Australian fullback, was out with a knee injury. So it's really kind of one of those where GWS is fighting the injury bug a little bit. But even still, they had a lot of talent on the field. They should have won this game. And a very sprightly young Sydney Swans team with another debutant in Zach Foote found a way to win in a game that, like I said, I did not see it happening, and I'm a Swans fan, and I did not see it happening. So it was pleasantly surprising. For my tipping, it sucks, but for me as a fan, it was awesome to watch the game, and I'm not trying to rub it in.
No, I understand it. It's all good.
But it
The hard
definitely
thing is, for me, it's crazy how I picked a team in the GWS Giants and how well they compare to some of my other favorite professional sports teams. We're talking in our episode that we dropped on Monday, how we can definitely compare the Giants to in when they were in the grand final a year ago. How we can compare that to my team, the Denver Broncos, showing up to Super Bowl 48, or should I say, not showing up to Super Bowl 48, being this phenomenal team, record-breaking offense, and looking like they should win it probably, only to get embarrassed and look like they don't show up. And now late in the season like this, or kind of mid season, mid to late, I would compare them to my San Jose Sharks over in the NHL. How they have all this talent, but they're fighting injury bugs, and either they show up and really play well, or they don't show up at all and get blown out. And this is really up and down season. So it's almost uncanny to me how well they match some of their favorite teams. And it almost disappoints me how good I am at picking teams like this that just give me blood pressure issues.
don't worry about it. If it makes you feel any better, for my hockey team, I'm a Buffalo Sabres fan. So if that makes you feel any better,
that that does make you feel better. I appreciate Vander Kane.
considering we haven't seen the playoffs in a decade. So, which is really, really funny because the Swans is the exact opposite. For until last year, they had made 20 out of the last 21 finals. They had made the playoffs in 20 of the previous 21 seasons. So they were a marvel of consistency until last year. When again, it's kind of the same thing with this year. Injury bug gets them having to blood a lot of young players. Which, I mean, you would think in the next couple of years this might actually be a good thing, but it makes some of those early mornings trying to watch the game a little bit difficult when you're watching a young team just not have the skill and the talent to be able to win. So it was a pleasant surprise this morning to see Foote play well. Nick Blakey comes back in. I love one of the best nicknames I know. They call him the Lizard.
The Lizard.
The Lizard. Nick Blakey, number 20. Yep, they call him the Lizard.
Is he quick?
He's long. He's long and oh yeah, he's really quick. In fact, I noticed that the coach John Longmire wanted to play him a little bit more in the midfield, and I think it really helped him out a lot in this game. He kicked 2 goals, had 13 disposals in the first half, which were both career highs, and that was at halftime. So he had a really, really good game. So it was kind of nice to see some young players get a lot of really good. And James Rowbottom, who comes into the midfield, who's only 19 years old.
That's still ridiculous.
He started every game in the midfield and is looking better each and every game. So it's like there's a lot of things to look forward to as a Swans fan that has me really, really looking forward to the next couple of seasons after this year.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a round of applause. It's a painful one, but congrats to Sydney for showing the Giants that you kind of have to show up if you want to win the game of footy. But to kind of go off of this game with the Giants getting crushed, let's talk about what this loss means for their playoff hopes. And who does their loss benefit the most? So, of course, they lost 66-25. That tied a team record for the lowest score ever. And so, what does this mean to their team moving forward?
Well, the biggest thing really now is that it really puts them in this precipice type situation because their next game's against West Coast and
Mm-hmm.
it's in West Coast. So it really, really makes their road to get to the finals with only a few more weeks left in the season. They've got to pretty much almost win out just to make sure they stay in the finals because Essendon and Melbourne are 9 and 10,
Mm-hmm.
and they still have an extra game to play. Now
Yep.
they play each other, so one's not gonna get any points. One's gonna get 4 points unless they somehow pull a draw. So really, this really brings kind of everybody back a little bit closer. You've got Western Bulldogs who are only 2 points behind that, and then the Gold Coast Suns. You just don't know. So it really puts a lot of pressure on GWS is that they cannot mess up anymore.
No.
They literally go into this West Coast game almost having to win just to keep their spot in the eighth. So it'll really be interesting to see how Leon Cameron handles this. Is can he get some of the injured stars back? How will they handle West Coast? And if they lose to West Coast, the panic buttons are getting closer to being touched because now you're really sitting here with an Essendon team and a Melbourne team, and a Melbourne team is starting to play better. A Melbourne team that has a lot of young talent, a lot of skill.
Yeah.
They're coming. Western's kind of Jekyll and Hyde. You just don't know. Gold Coast, they're young, so they may slip up. So really, Essendon and Melbourne are the two teams that I see that potentially could jump GWS if they slip up anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And West Coast is just no guarantee. You just don't know.
And it's scary
So it
because,
definitely kind of depends how the rest of this round goes
yep.
and then how they do against West Coast. Like I said, Melbourne's got Collingwood. That's a good rivalry. Collingwood's still got a lot of injuries. And Essendon plays St. Kilda. St. Kilda, a strong team. But again, is St. Kilda's confidence wavered after Geelong kind of took them off and took them behind the woodshed a little bit.
A little
So
bit.
it's very interesting how the rest of this week will go because
Mm-hmm.
it'll really kind of shape. I really don't see anything past Gold Coast. Carlton is strong, but there's just so many points to make up and so
Mm-hmm.
few games to make it up in. And unless Carlton goes undefeated from now on, I really kind of see Gold Coast and 12 is the cutoff line that can still make the playoffs.
And
So
that's
it really kind
mm-hmm.
of see.
It's kind of scary right
So
there
yeah,
too because from 8 to 12, that's only a 6 point difference, and we all know that 6 points could be gone in an instant. And leads like those don't last, and especially with maybe even probably a Giants team with now a pretty hurt to their confidence levels as well. And we all know you feel good, play good, and if you're not feeling good, you're probably not going to play good. And it, man, as a fan, I got my fingers crossed that they somehow just hopefully just scrape by and do something nice in the finals. But Essendon and Melbourne, they scare me right now, and I am not liking those teams. So let's hope for the
and
best.
it's the pressure. It's the pressure.
Pressure.
The pressure can make diamonds or it can burst pipes. That's
Mm-hmm.
it's unfortunately is the biggest thing here for GWS is all the pressure is on their shoulders is that they have to win games of footy now. So definitely see how they handle it.
Also,
If they beat
mm-hmm.
West Coast, I mean anything's possible after that.
And I'm so curious to see how they react to this loss because either sometimes you could see a team lay down and then just kind of accept it, or you see other teams when they get back into a corner, they fight and they come out scratching. So hopefully it's the latter. We'll see what we get going on to round 13. But another thing I want to talk about is maybe not as serious as Giants' playoff hopes right now, but let's talk about the Carlton fans and their attempt to recruit Sydney gun Tom Palpy when they were at the Sydney GWS game last night. I loved it.
This one actually, there's a little bit of a backstory to this.
Mm,
Is after the season, after the grand final, there's what they call the trade period. Unlike American sports, you don't have like a trade deadline in the middle of the season. Their trading happens before the season starts.
mm,
Tommy Papley at one time, there was rumors again. There have been kind of disputing discussions about this. Is that Tommy Papley had went to the brass at the Saint at Sydney
mm-hmm.
and had wanted a trade back to Melbourne because he's originally from Melbourne. And it's one of the things that you see a lot in AFL nowadays is players having homesickness. They want to go back to the home states. Western Australian boys like Tim Kelly went from Geelong to West Coast because he wanted to be closer to his family. So it kind of happens. You see a little bit more than in American sports where the money kind of keeps you in a certain place and you can
Mm-hmm.
move your family. With the Australians, for some reason, they like to be in their home states. So
Yep.
you see a lot of this. It's like a player wants to go home. So there was this huge rumor that Tommy Papley wanted to go back. So Sydney was actually looking at dealing him to Carlton for a trade, along with Sydney was looking at potentially signing oft injured, but still very talented Joe Danaher from
Mm.
the Essendon Bombers. And a lot of people said that the Papley deal had to happen for the Danaher deal. It never really happened.
Mm.
So Carlton fans are still hoping that maybe this next trade period, Papley will still be interested in going back home and that they'll get him. Now, Papley is in red hot form right now. Now, he wasn't so much this morning. He only had three behinds, but he's one of those players. If he gets the footy, he can be electric. He
Yep.
is one of those guys with the footy in his hands, can do a lot of things. So the biggest question will be is does Sydney drive up his price because of how good he's done this year? I mean, he's second in the Coleman, which is the most goals kicked in the league. He's second in the Coleman. He's one of the shortest guys, and he's second in the Coleman because he's kicked so many goals. He's really been Sydney's best goal kicker with their oft injuries of Sam Reed, their big power forward, and then the mega millionaire Lance Buddy Franklin, who's one of the best players in the league. If you ever get a chance to see his highlights, check that out. The guy is electric. 6'6", fast as a hiccup, and strong as a bull ox. So much fun. So if you get a chance to see his highlights, Lance Buddy Franklin, a really, really good one to see. So Papley's kind of making up for that. But
Mm-hmm.
again, with all the injuries for Sydney, but it really does make you think, does Sydney move him for even more, maybe a couple of first round draft picks to potentially stock up even more young talent? Or do they keep him since he's still got 2 years left on his
Mm.
contract? So there's really, really a lot of questions. The Carlton fans, they're trying. They saw him at the State of Origin game for the fire relief, and he was in the navy blue of the Victorian game, and everybody was like, he looks so good in the Victorian. Hopefully, he's in Carlton blue in the next couple of years. So there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
fun to it. This one
See,
had legs.
now to
This
me,
one
I
was
just
kind of a fun.
it was almost alien to me because you hardly see this like at least in American sports. But I love the idea of a the game was between Sydney and GWS, and Carlton isn't even a part of it, but we still have fans going to that game to try just to get Tommy's attention at that game that he's playing in. I love it, and I really respect like almost the dedication that that takes. That's awesome.
And 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 Papley is a character. The guy is a character. He's had so much fun. He's such a ham. He's a fun player to watch. He's one of the when he's around the footy. He's a little firecracker. He's so much fun to watch. So he's definitely one to look out for. And I'd definitely be interested to see, does this one have legs again? And does next year's trade season, does he move, or does he stay in Sydney, and does he stay up at the Harbour City, or does he find his way back to Melbourne? And
Now
what does
that
Sydney get from that?
that's definitely gonna be one of the biggest stories going into the next offseason. It's gonna be fun to see how that kind of comes in, kind of falls together. But kind of talking about what we had in our power rankings, let's talk a little contender pretender with the top eights. And in your opinion, will any we talked about Essendon and Melbourne being nipping at the tail of the Giants. So are they the two teams, or at least one of those teams? Are they kind of the favorite to be? That's not the top eight right now, but is likely the team that's going to get into the top eight at the end of the season.
Such a tough one, just because, again, unfortunately, not all the fixtures are out. So the biggest question will be is who plays who. Melbourne's next two games are Collingwood and Western, both very winnable games. Collingwood's got a lot of injuries. Western again is kind of Jekyll and Hyde, but Collingwood can. It's a Victorian competition. It's a
Mm-hmm.
Victorian rivalry, so you just never know. Collingwood's still got a lot of talent there, and then with Melbourne with Western again, Western can find a way to play. So it's like For me, at Essendon's not much easier. St. Kilda and Richmond are their next two games. So you could even, as a GWS fan, could see yourself get very lucky is that have both of the teams in eighth and ninth and 10th both lose the next two games. Whether it'll happen or not is really kind of up in the air. Again, Collingwood, for me, I like Collingwood over Melbourne.
Mm-hmm.
We can discuss that a little bit later on in the show, but it's definitely going to be interesting for me. I think GWS can hold on, but
Mm-hmm.
really, like I said, the fixtures after week 13, which 14 hasn't come out yet to the end of the year, that's really what I kind of want to see is who plays who when to see do teams ahead of them play harder teams. So that's definitely up in the air. So for me, if you had to make me choose between Essendon and Melbourne, I'd go Melbourne. I think Melbourne's two games are much easier to win
Mm.
than Essendon's, but Essendon is a really good footy team on the right day.
Mm-hmm.
They could pull out two games, but we'll just have to see. But
See.
if you
Mm-hmm.
twisted my arm and said, who do I believe would be the more likely to get in the eight, I
Yep.
would say the Melbourne Demons.
And that is over. Then who do they replace in that top eight? You're saying GWS, or are you saying more
It's either
Collingwood?
GWS, it's either GWS or Collingwood.
Well, I'm
If
twisting your
Melbourne
arm
beats
once again. I'm twisting your arm once
if
again. You
Melbourne
gotta give me one.
if Melbourne beats Collingwood, honestly, I think Collingwood. They're such an interesting situation because of all the injuries. Unfortunately, I'd say GWS just because Collingwood does have a 2 point little gap on them,
Yeah.
so they have a little bit more breathing space. And Collingwood plays North in round 13,
Mm.
so that's a much easier winnable game.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, if Melbourne replaces somebody, it's most likely going to be GWS.
I like it.
Again, no offense to my beloved co-star here, but
It's all good. You know what?
unfortunately,
I'm not
we had to
taking
flip. That's the way I'd see it.
not taking any offense to that. And now you're learning too. The way we run stuff on Fourth and Long is that we're always twisting arms. There is no this or that. We are this is what's going on. And even if it hurts to say, you just gotta kind of just deep breath and just gotta say it. That's what I do. Half my UFC stuff, half my NFL stuff, my MLB power ranking stuff like that. So we're gonna learn here. We're not kind of little wishy washy. We like to make decisions here. That's what we kind of pride ourselves on. Also, it's always fun to twist the arm of someone that's a little indecisive. I always have a good time.
Always good, always good.
And now let's talk about Hawthorn and whether that they should play their younger players or should they really try to go for it this year. What you're saying that they are one of the oldest teams in the league. There's a lot of old guys, but they've won the flags. Are they done? Your thoughts on this team and what they should do moving forward with the rest of the season?
Oh, Alistair Clarkson, the man has a huge decision to make. Does he finally accept that Hawthorn is no longer in a Premiership contendership and blood his young players and let some of his older players go to the point where maybe he can restock his cupboards?
Mm-hmm.
He he's one of the last coaches to win three in a row. He wins four in 40506, three consecutive flags with a team that slowly he's bled some of his talent out from those teams. He's still got a few remaining that you wonder, are they going to stay? Are they going to find themselves in other rosters or are they going to retire? So Alistair Clarkson, one of the best coaches in the league, has got a lot of decisions to make. If you put me in his shoes, I do not see you making the finals. I do not see you winning a flag in the next couple of years. I start getting the young kids in, get them time on the footy, get them into these AFL games when there's no pressure, there's no chance of you ruining their careers because they need the game time. Guys like Sean Burgoyne, they've been stalwarts of your club. They've won you flags. They're great players. But in some situations, I'd almost see if you can find a way to move them to get draft picks, to get more youth into this team.
Mm-hmm.
Hawthorne, is a great, great story with all that he's done. But I honestly believe their time is over. And some of these older players need to be moved on. They need to be let go. They just need to revamp it.
Mhm.
They haven't had a first round draft pick in 5 years. They have moved their first round draft pick.
Wow.
So they have no superstar young kids coming in.
Mm-hmm.
So with the fact that they don't have that young talent coming in, they've had to rely on the elder statesmen, the mid 30s guys that by
Mm-hmm.
now their best games are behind them. Silk, Sean Burgoyne is one of the best players to play the game, but unfortunately, he just he's not going to help them win a flag
Yeah.
anymore. And I think he knows it. I think Clarkson knows it. The biggest question is, will he pull the trigger and move Silk to the Gold Coast to let him
Mm-hmm.
kind of play out the rest of his year and let him nurture some of the good Gold Coast talent? Does he stay on the list as a coach, or does he retire, or does he just simply get released? That's the biggest question, and I don't envy Clarko's decision because it's not going to be easy. I
No.
really don't, and he's been the best coach in the league for the last 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
So you hope he's got the right decision in him, but unfortunately, Clarko is a little bit of a stubborn old guy, so we'll have to see.
Now, it's always times like these for a coach, for a franchise, for organizations to go through because, on the one hand, you really, there's, especially as a fan too, there's all this love and respect for these old players that have brought you to these great successes, whether it be titles, whether it be really good playoff runs, or whether it just be the memories from the regular season. And it gets to a point where, yeah, the best decision for in terms of our playing level, in terms of our success on the pitch, it's going to be best to move away from them and to bring in the younger guys. But at the same time, it's really hard to overcome the feeling of respect for them and almost feeling like this connection where like, yeah, they're the team and we can't replace them. And especially as a fan, seeing old guys go, it's always really hard to make these decisions because there's a level of loyalty that you feel to these veterans. But at the same time, it's all about the success of the future. And if we're talking sports, I'm not sure about the as much of the culture in footy as is in say sports like the NFL or the NHL or the MLB or the NBA, where at the end of the day it's a business and we have to make business decisions and we have to make the right choices for the franchise moving forward. But at the same time, it's these are always the hardest parts of of an organization as a fan or as a member of that. And so, best of luck to them. Hopefully, they can make the right choice. And the hard thing is, no matter what choice you make, it's going to suck.
Unfortunately, it's got to be a little pain. It's whether it's accepting a couple of years that you're not going to make the finals, that you got to
Mm-hmm.
bring along younger players, or if you continue to try to fight on with the old guys until maybe potentially it kind of goes out. So it'll definitely be interesting. But
100%.
um,
And now,
yeah.
since we're on the topic of finals, let's talk about the grand final. Where should this one be played?
Oh man, so much conjecture. Kind of like as we discussed in the last podcast, is
Mm-hmm.
the Queensland government has been absolutely bending over backwards to keep this competition going, and I think a lot of people in Australia know if it weren't for Queensland, the season would not exist.
Mm-hmm.
You would not have gotten it after about week 7, around 7, basically. So for me, I see the argument, but if the AFL wants to make as much money as they can because of all the money that they've lost because of ticket sales and because of the lack of fans in the stands for several weeks, I have to say it's got to go to Optus Stadium out in Perth just because of the fact it's your biggest stadium that's available since the MCG is not because of all the issues with COVID in Victoria. Um, Adelaide Oval has a strong, but Perth is bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And in some situations, you hate saying it, but if you want to get the most fans, if you want to get the most bang for your buck, to where the AFL can make the most money,
Especially
I hate
since we
saying
can't
it.
fully fill the stadiums now anyway.
Yeah. Well, the good thing is, hopefully by then, if they continue to keep to where they don't have any cases in
Mm-hmm.
Western Australia, there is the argument that you could get a sold out Optus Stadium,
That'd be
which would
so
be
nice.
amazing,
Let's knock on wood, man.
especially
Man.
especially if you still got a chance for West Coast to be there and the West Coast Eagle fans to be at home,
Hmm.
it's definitely a shot. But in some situations, like I said, the argument for me personally is Adelaide Oval in South Australia and Perth. Like I said, if you go purely by financials, I think Perth gets it just
Hmm.
because bigger crowd, more money. The biggest question will be is that the main sponsor for the AFL is Telstra,
Okay.
and Optus is competition,
Hmm.
and Telstra AFL Grand Final and Optus Oval. Yeah, it's a little kind of funky. I think it's a little petty if they did make that decision
Yeah.
to not do it just because it's named after a competition. I think that's kind of ridiculous. But I think
Hmm.
if Telstra is smart and they realize you're going to make more money in the long run, getting more people in the stands, I think it's got to be Perth.
Exactly.
But there's still talk. There's still talk that Queensland or South Australia, with the Adelaide Oval, could still host it. The latest that I've heard in some of the Melbourne publications that I keep an eye on is that it sounds like what they're going to do is they're going to have the league MVP, which is the Brownlow Medal, that will actually be hosted in Queensland as a way to kind of say thank you. And maybe some of the earlier finals games, like the elimination
That'd be
finals, will be
nice.
played in Queensland,
Yeah.
and then with either the two prelims and then the grand final in Western Australia, or all of the finals games except the grand final in Queensland, and then
Hmm.
the final in either South Australia or Perth. So they're still kind of up in the air. I know one of the publications is they've basically blocked out the GABA for a lot of the weeks that are kind of the finals weeks.
Mm.
So I really kind of feel like that's kind of the way they're going to go, is that most of the finals games up to the grand final will be in Queensland, either at Gold Coast or the GABA. And then the grand final will probably be in Perth just because of the financials.
That makes some very valid points. Honestly, I don't know too much enough, but it would be a very nice gesture to at least have a lot of the games or take place in Queensland because it really means a lot for them to keep the season afloat. And it'd be nice to give back because if it was for them, we wouldn't be able to have that grand final in the first place. But to kind of wrap this show up, let's talk about rounds 12 and 13. Here is the Hess Howard hour, whatever the hell you want to call it. We'll come up with a good name for this. I promise. We're going to get a good name for this, but the Hess tips right now tell us all we need to know about these round 12, round 13 games.
Ooh, some cracking games of football. So unfortunately, like we said, at the time of recording, Sydney GBS has already kind of went through, but
Mm-hmm.
we'll go off that. The first game of the round, like I said, tomorrow after this recording will be Geelong Port. This was a tough one to pick because Geelong's always tough, but I'm going to have to lean Port here. I think Port's very, very strong. Geelong's still kind of fighting, and some of their best players are out. Ablett Jr. is still out because of some issues with his son back in Melbourne, which again I completely support, and I'm glad that he's able to see
Mm-hmm.
family's a lot more important than footy right
Yes.
now. And then some of their really strong players are hurt. I got to lean Port here. Next game is North versus Brisbane. North Melbourne, I love you guys, but Kangaroos had just I cannot go. The Brisbane Lions are so strong, so I gotta go with the Lions here. Melbourne Collingwood. This one, as a GWS fan, you'll love. I'm gonna lean Collingwood. I don't. I just. I Melbourne just. I don't feel confident about them. I like Christian Petrarca. He's playing amazing footy right now, but I don't know. I'm leaning Collingwood. The Magpies
I
here.
like it. I like
I'm
it.
hoping. I'm crossing my fingers. Maybe Mason Cox gets back in, but
Yes.
Darcy
Mason.
Cameron played really, really well last week, so I don't know if he's going to get his spot back. We'll definitely have to see.
Shout out to Mason
Fremantle
Cox.
Park.
Easily my
Yeah,
favorite play. I have to. I have to go with him. The 6'10" beast that is the American himself. So all my support has to go to him.
I just hope he gets himself healthy. He's been fighting that knee injury ever since they came back, and that's
It's
been kind of the
hard.
hardest part.
Yeah.
Moving on from there, Fremantle Carlton. Another one I was having a lot of trouble because Fremantle is starting to play much better footy. Their young guys are really getting going, but I think Carlton's gonna just nip them. This is going to be a good game. This is going to be another one that I'm definitely going to keep my eye on. Um, oh boy, Western Bulldogs in Adelaide. This could be an interesting footy game. This will be ugly. Sorry, Adelaide Crows fans. I don't
It's not this
I,
one.
I'm much more confident in Western than I am Adelaide, but I'm seeing some positive signs out of Adelaide. I we'll see, but I gotta lean to the doggies on this one. That's a good one. St. Kilda Essendon, another tough one. Essendon is such a good run and gun team, but St. Kilda, they think they just have a little bit too much for Essendon. I really like Essendon. Their run off halfback is some of the best in the league, but I just think St. Kilda has just a little bit too much. So I'm going to go St. Kilda on this one. West Coast Hawthorn, kind of like we just discussed earlier in the episode. I think Hawthorn really needs to kind of blood some of the young talent. West Coast just so strong right now. Darling and Kennedy up forward are doing well. Nick Natanui in the midfield. They're just so strong with Kelly Shuey and Natanui in the midfield. They're
Hmm.
such a tough team. I don't see too many teams beating West Coast going into the finals right now. And then another one that I think could be sneaky good is Richmond versus Gold Coast, the last game of the round. Gold Coast, this is going to be a good barometer on how some of these younger players play against a Richmond team that likes to suffocate you. They play high, heavy, quick footy. They play chaos footy. They want the ball on the ground. They want chaos all around because they want their mosquito fleet of young, small players to have their way. I gotta go Richmond in this.
Hmm.
I like Gold Coast, but they're just so inexperienced at this point. But they're on their way. I think this is going to be a good game. I think it's going to be a little bit closer than some
Hmm.
people think, but I gotta lean Richmond here.
And now, as round 12 as a whole, before we get into 13, real quick, your best game that's going to be in round 12, if you had to choose, which is it going to be?
I gotta lean towards Geelong Port tomorrow morning. That's going. I think that has a chance to be another game of the season. Geelong is strong. Port is strong. I think Port, like I said, I think Port's got a little too bit much. But honestly, if I had to sit there and sit down and watch every single minute of one game, this entire game,
Hmm.
that's the game I want to see. Is one versus three on the ladder, one Port, three Geelong. This is gonna be a good one. Uh, can Charlie Dixon establish himself as the power forward that he is, or can Dangerfield and the Cats find a way to nip the Port power and kind of tighten up the ladder a little bit? We'll definitely have to see. So that's if I got to say the one game you want to see Port versus Geelong.
Port versus Geelong. Yes, sir. And then wrap it up with the games we have right now. Round 13, what you got for us?
Round 13 starts off with a good one. This one I had to fight with myself a little bit. Gold Coast versus Carlton. Two really young, very talented teams, up and coming teams that in the next few years you're gonna want to be behind. I gotta lean Gold Coast. I think Carlton kind of. I think Carlton's kind of again has that kind of little. They'll have a good game. They'll have a bad game. Have a good game. Have a bad game. So I don't know. I like Isaac Rankin. I like this Gold Coast team. I think they're starting to go. I think they'll get a little bit of confidence if they play well against Richmond, even in a loss. So I think I gotta go Gold Coast in this
Hmm.
one. Western Melbourne, another one. I'm not real strong with either team. Melbourne can have its moments. Western can have its moments. I'm gonna go Western here, which is gonna help you as a GWS fan a lot because that's the team that I think honestly has the best opportunity to get there. So
Oh, yeah.
as you can see here, I have them losing both games, unfortunately. So for your GWS Giants, it's a little bit nice.
You say unfortunately,
Going
I
off,
say let's do it.
yeah, we'll have to see. And then following that will be Port versus Hawthorn again. Port I
Definitely
really
have
want
an
to see how
edge.
they handle Geelong. If they beat Geelong rather easily, I don't think they're going to have too much trouble with Hawthorn. Hawthorn again, an aging club, but Hawthorn finds a way sometimes to 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 nip some of these really good teams sometimes. So that's one of those I'd be a little
Hmm.
bit scared, especially off a big win against Geelong. I still have Port in that,
It's what
but
you can call a
that's a
trap game,
game
though. You can
that
definitely
could
call
be a
that a trap
trap
game.
game for Port there, big time. A really fun game after that is Essendon versus Richmond. Both teams like chaos. Both teams are very fast footy. That could be one of the games of the round in that one. That one's going to be a fun one. I definitely want to try to watch that one when that comes up. After that, Fremantle and Sydney in the West. As a Swans fan, I love what they did against GWS. I think that the game style was a
Yeah.
lot of fun. I'm not going to homer. I'm trying not to homer this. I
You're
really
not
try to
rubbing
really
in at
want
all.
you.
You're not. Of
For me, it's just more of seeing the confidence of the young guys
course.
for sure. But I gotta go Sydney in this. I think their young talent is starting to play better. They're starting to get some of their injury guys back. And the youth looks really, really good. They're out on the West Coast. It's a nice big field for them to play on. They've used their speed game a little bit, so I'm gonna lean towards the Swans in this one. Adelaide v Geelong. Sorry, Crows fans. I just even if unless Geelong gets absolutely beat up by Port, I'm sorry. The Cats have just a little bit too much for you. That's another one, kind of like Port Hawthorn. If Adelaide gets going, and Geelong's maybe a little bit beat up after that, that could be a trap game.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna lean to Geelong, but it'll definitely be an interesting one. That could definitely be a trap game. This one is the mammoth game of the round in round 13. Number 2 Brisbane, number 5 St. Kilda right
Oh
now
man.
in the Gabba. Going to be a great game. Both teams love to score. Both teams like to move the ball down the field. Both teams are so quick. I'm going to lean towards Brisbane
Okay.
because they're going to be at home. St. Kilda, this is another test game to see are they legitimately going to be a team to watch out for in the finals. They lose this one, especially even after that loss to Geelong. Are they going to be in kind of that pretender? They're going to make the playoffs, but they're just going to kind of be passengers after the first game. So we'll definitely have to see. That could that in my opinion will be the game of the round. That one there, Brisbane v St. Kilda in the Gabba. After that, a tough this one could be a good game too, depending on how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
West Coast v
Now
GWS.
this one may very well be kind of the make or break game for GWS this season.
And definitely, and going off of how Melbourne goes against Collingwood Western, this could be a game that GWS could really, really springboard if they can find a way to beat West Coast. Personally, I think West Coast is so strong, and with GWS still having some injury issues, I don't know how Phil Davis is going to be. I don't know when Toby Green's going to be back.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how they respond would definitely be it. If GWS comes out hot right off the bat, GWS is in the game. If they get down a couple of goals early on the road against a West Coast team that's so strong,
Mm-hmm.
I just don't see them coming back. I gotta lean West Coast in this one, but I think it's going to be closer than a lot of people think. I think GWS responds really well after this city. Leon Cameron's not going to let them have two bad games in a row, so that one's going to be a good one. And then Collingwood North Melbourne. I almost lean towards North Melbourne just because I think Collingwood is going to have a little bit of a high, I think, after they beat Melbourne. But I think Collingwood is going to slowly start getting some of these injuries back, going to slowly start getting better. I'm going to go Collingwood in this one. But this one, I did fight with myself a little bit, thinking maybe North, thinking maybe Reshaw could get his boys back
Mm-hmm.
together. But I think Nathan Buckley and Collingwood they've still got a lot of good young talent on that team, so they're gonna. I don't like that one because I think North has the ability to beat Collingwood, but I think I'll take the Maggies in that one. So, and that will be it for round 13. So now we just gotta wait till round 14 comes out.
I love it, and by the time maybe we'll get our next show done by there, but that's pretty much going to do it for us guys. All of some really great stuff from the power rankings to the round recaps to some really interesting kind of storylines developing through the season, and then some really fun stuff to look forward to in rounds 12 and 13. Before we wrap this thing up, here's at the end, this is my time to shill. So if I move my head, if you're looking on the video, you can see right behind me, Fourth and Long banner. You can get that for your wall. I'm wearing my Fourth and Long gray shirt. We have a bunch of stuff. You just go to our website, www.thefourthandlong.com, and you go to apparel, click on the picture. It takes you right to our shop. Everything you do, any money spent there goes right into the show, gets us pumping some more of this amazing content. And now, time for Coach Hess, head coach of the Des Moines Roosters of the USAFL. Let's plug your stuff, usafl.com. And then we can find the Des Moines Roosters on Twitter. We can find them on Instagram. And we can find them almost everywhere else. Also, Coach Hess, runner of the Des Moines Roosters accounts as well, as well as his own account. And anything else you want to shout out for yourself?
Not much. Just the biggest thing I would say is that if you're really, really liking footy and you are in the U.S., check out the Watch AFL app.
Okay.
Um, it's definitely a good investment if you want to watch footy games, different stuff like that. Definitely keep an eye out on all of our socials because all of the games that will be broadcast in the USA, we will be putting out the schedules, whether on FS1, ESPN3, all those. If you need to know what games are on when and what times, definitely check out USAFL's Twitter page, USAFL's website. Um, the Des Moines Roosters page, I will definitely be putting it out both on the Roosters page and my own personal page as well. I will definitely try to get that sent to you if you want to put it out as well, just to be able to give more and more people the opportunity, both here in the States and then if you are an Aussie fan, if you get a chance to support some of these USAFL clubs, we always love the Aussie support. Please reach out. We're always looking to find new fans and different stuff like that. Um, so it's been a lot of fun.
Yes,
Thank you
sir.
for having me on.
Of course, this is just the first of many to come. A wonderful partnership forming. And also, speaking of merch, keep your eye out because there may be some AFL, some footy themed merch coming out soon. So just stay tuned. But this has been our AFL recap show, first one of its kind. I just want to give a tremendous thank you to Coach Hess for sharing his knowledge, for being able to give me some knowledge and be able to give all you guys in listening some knowledge. And I just want to appreciate all your support that you've been giving us once again on Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube, on Spotify, and on Apple Podcasts, and anywhere else you can find us. I love all of you. And with that being said, we're going to wrap things up. We'll catch you guys in the next one and have a great time watching some awesome round 12 action.